Welcome to the Center for Diversity Leadership, where we are supporting school leaders together across the nation as they create school cultures that ensure all students are seen, valued, celebrated, and heard. I am Dr. Ryan Daniel.
And I am Xavier Reed.
And we are your fellows in this work. Xavier, welcome to the Fellows Network. I am so excited to work with you this year. Why don't you tell our listeners more about you and why you became a fellow?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be a part of this journey with you and being able to learn alongside of you, and also to be able to connect with other educators across the country. And a little bit about myself is I am a principal in Wayzata, Minnesota. And so this is my third year in that role. And part of the reason why I wanted to be a fellow alongside of you is just be able to continue the important work that we are in as building leaders. My why, which I have a poster on my wall, says "Remember your why," is important to me, and it's important to me because it's about kids, it's about that next generation, and I always, it's important to remember that we in our schools have the next generation of everything, every job, every occupation, every career is in our schools, and I really just want to be able to have a big impact on that. Tell us a little bit about your why.
That is amazing. And I love this part because, I am elementary, Xavier is middle, and typically, elementary and middle school folk, they don't get to hang out together. So I have to remain cool so that my middle school partner likes hanging out with the elementary principal. But I am a principal in the state of Maryland. I'm super excited to be in my 8th year as a principal. And I think when I think of my why specifically, just as a leader of color and also a leader in the same school district that I grew up in, I love to be kind of a mirror to our students, for them to be able to see what they can be, that they are not a product of their environments, not a product of their neighborhoods. And, I love the opportunity that we get as school leaders to really reimagine education every single day for students, for staff members, for community members as well. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to become a fellow, because I love the power of networking and being able to learn from other leaders across the world. I am super excited to learn from you this year, Xavier, and beyond, and just excited for what we're going to do as a center. So the Center for Diversity Leadership, our goals for our center is truly to curate content for each of you on how to support school buildings and school communities that may look like you and that may not. How do you support a community that your cultural there are cultural differences, or your backgrounds may not be the same? So, our 3 goals are promoting best leadership practices related to cultural responsiveness and inclusion, amplifying the voices of leaders of color, and then also providing action-oriented approaches and resources for leaders around equity, diversity, and inclusion. We want you to be able to take away each time you come to a meetup, you join us for a Twitter chat, or you just listen to us on the podcast on your way home or to work. We want you to be able to get something that you can turnkey into your leadership practices. So today we're talking about the importance of school leaders creating a shared voice in their school communities. I think this topic is so important, Xavier. What about you?
Yeah, this topic is very important. And this topic is important as a school leader, because we can't do this work by ourselves. Regardless of the situation that we're in the school building, regardless of how many years of experience you've had, this work has to be collective. It has to be done in partnership, and you have different stakeholders within your school community. You have the teaching staff, you have the administrative staff, you also have families, and you have students as well. And so between all of those different stakeholders, how do we encompass all of those different voices, perspectives, and help that to be seen? This is a perfect time to talk about this as we are getting ready to start the school year, because for many principals and many leaders, the summer work was really trying to build that shared leadership and that shared voice within their schools.
I love the word that you use, collective and partnership, because, oftentimes we think that the leader has to be in charge of everything, right? The leader is the only one that's moving the work. But when we think of like the word collective and partnership, is really getting buy-in. I think we get buy-in from our school community when we listen to the voices of our school community. I say all the time to my teachers, everyone that is affected by the work must affect the work.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in this together. So what are some strategies principals can use to involve like their teachers, their students, and parents in developing and possibly redefining shared language?
Honestly, one of the easiest and maybe hardest for some people strategy is walking into that position, walking into that work with humility, and walking into it with humility, because as leaders, I know that there sometimes is a pressure to be able to be the person that maybe has to solve issues, solve problems. Maybe you feel the urge to have all the answers, but being able to walk in humility and walk into spaces and not know what the answer is going to be, and let people know, I need your support. You are the expert, in the classroom. You are the expert as a parent of this child that's in our school building, and being able to just be humble about that, I think is important. I think it's always important to provide avenues for voices to be heard. So with different stakeholders, that might look different. For your students, that might be an opportunity for them to sit down with you, and for to have some listening sessions with students on what their experience has been at school, what are their needs for this upcoming school year. Historically, how have they been able to be supported while they've been in school? For me as a middle school principal, our students are coming in with 7 years of experience of being a part of, or 6 years of experience of being a part of the K-12 system, and so they really know what they need. It's about helping them to articulate that, and I think with families, that's important too. One of the great things that we did last year was we actually had a listening session with families of students that were accessing our prayer space. So in our building, we have a prayer space for students. And so as learners, because myself and my staff, none of us, are of the Muslim faith and aren't praying during school. So we wanted to know kind of what has been the norm, what are the expectations from families, how can we support them better. And it was just a great conversation that allowed us to do a lot of learning rather than implementing policies.
I did something very, very similar to that, to your listening sessions. I had focus groups, and one of the things that I wanted to learn in my first year as a principal at my first school. So I've had the opportunity to lead 2 school communities. My first school community was a very large Hispanic population. However, what I had noticed was that my Hispanic population and my African American population of students, of families, they just were not getting along. And so I wanted to do some listening sessions. So I did a focus group with our Hispanic families, and then a focus group with our African American families, just to kind of find the needs, the desires, some of the frustrations and challenges. And then I brought them together. And I think the biggest strategy that principals, assistant principals can really use in developing and then even possibly redefining, because at that moment I was redefining what shared language looked like from when I got there to like from now. I think being able to listen to each of the subgroups and demographics, all of the stakeholders, I think is really important. Finding the trends between each of the populations or groups that they're listening to, but then even creating decision-making processes that facilitate, students and families and community engagement, so that everyone understands like the goals of the school. I think that's super important for school leaders to ensure that they are creating buy-in by sharing the language and the goals with everyone. I think so often we think that we just need to be sharing it with our staff, like they're the only ones that need to know kind of which way the train is moving. But why not share that information with the students? Why not share that information with our community stakeholders? And I think that's a great way to really get the buy-in when we're talking about involving all of our stakeholders into like the language and voice of your particular school.
Mhm. And I think that that's so important when we are in those spaces and we are, trying to gather that information or, being able to provide that opportunity, is that as leaders, we're not dominating that conversation or that space with our thoughts and our opinions. And I think we have to have some intentionality within, trying to invoke some conversation, trying to encourage maybe even some disagreement. I think that that's something that is important, that productive conflict is important. And it's also, making it clear to whoever you're working with, whatever stakeholder it is, that as a leader, you're a learner in that space and that you can provide some perspective, but you're not trying to come in and just make decisions and trying to tell them what needs to happen. I think goes a long way in trying to build that shared voice.
And we know it's not easy. We know it, we can give leaders all of these different strategies, but what works best for my school building may not work necessarily best for yours. What works at the elementary level may not work at the middle school level. So what do you think are some challenges that schools may face when they are establishing this shared voice among their entire school community?
I think there's a couple things. I think sometimes people get attuned to and used to just kind of not having their voices be a part of different conversations, different spaces. And so when you give them that opportunity, they don't quite know what to do with that. I think sometimes that comes up with students a lot. It can come up with staff too. And I think one of the biggest challenges is trying to like establish what shared voice looks like, and getting people used to being in that space and being able to share what their thoughts are, their experiences are. I think sometimes in society we get so used to it just being a top-down approach. You're being told what you're going to do or what expectations are, and when someone asks you, when someone goes out of the way and asks you what your opinion is on this, or what are some ideas that you have or some thoughts on that, it sometimes is hard to be able to enter that conversation. And so it takes time. I think that it takes time, and it takes a lot of intentionality in having those conversations happen, but also as a leader being aware that of the work that needs to happen. I think for myself, I've seen a lot of progress with teacher voice in our building, and really them being able to see themselves as leaders and understand kind of just the concept of what that means as a teacher leader, because that's different from an administrator. But the challenges are going to be there. I think just understanding and assessing clearly where your building is at, and understanding where people are at.
Yeah, I love you said something that stood out to me, and it was that intentionality. I think that is the challenge. There is like, how intentional are you being with creating the shared language? Because I think oftentimes we as in school leaders, because we're so task oriented, we know we got to get the things done. Sometimes we may not be intentional about creating the time, the space for the opportunities to build this shared language, because we're always, we got to get this done. This has to be done. This deadline is coming up. And I think the biggest challenge that we have is that we don't take the time to be intentional when it comes to creating the shared language, or we pass it on to someone else to do. And I think as a school leader, everyone is waiting for the direction from the leader. And so, yes, we can have equity leads, we can have our our assistant principals do some of the work, but the reality of it is that people are looking for the voice of the leader to kind of start the work, because then it's almost like the person is driving the car, and after the person gets the car started and going forward, then it's like, okay, I'm on the bus now, I'm riding it. And so I think that as leaders, that's sometimes our biggest challenge, because our plate is so full of all of the things that are important. Oftentimes we don't see the need to be intentional of creating that shared language. And so we have to be very strategic about embedding it in like our leadership team meetings, in our monthly staff meetings, of giving opportunities where we're constantly building on. And I think the other challenge is that we want it to happen right now. We want everybody to jump on the boat and be ready to paddle forward. But the reality of it is that it's not going to happen. And so I think sometimes our own expectations can be a challenge for us as school leaders. Like, we know where we need to go as a school community, but we sometimes often can kind of hinder ourselves. I know that I can do that sometimes. Sometimes I know the work that is ahead of us, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to fill it out. I'm just going to put what our priorities are, and then I'll just share it with everyone. But then I have to be very reflective. I'm like, well, how are they really going to buy into it if their voice wasn't a part of this, if they didn't feel that this was truly our need or should be our priority, for this upcoming school year.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that a lot.
So, Xavier, any last words as we kind of wrap up our first podcast together? I'm so excited for this partnership.
Yeah, no, super excited about it. I think we know just all the leaders that we're talking to right now. We know that this is a very busy time for you. I think, to reiterate, take care of yourself. Make sure that you create some time for you to be able to decompress and be able to be with your thoughts. But just know that the work that you're doing is important. I know it's appreciated, and always remember what that why is, because that why is what should be driving you, and what can remind you of why you got into this in the first place. But I hope that the shared voice conversation, I hope that you were able to take away a couple nuggets from myself and Dr. Ryan, and I'm looking forward to future conversations.
Absolutely. We thank you all so much for joining us. Hopefully, there's something that you took today that you're able to put into your leadership tool belt for tomorrow, understanding that as a school leader, it is truly important for us to, while we're creating these inclusive environments for our students, that we are listening to the voices of everyone. Remember, everyone that's affected by the work must affect the work. And so everyone should be a part of the conversation. We thank you and look forward to more resources and information coming from the Center for Diversity Leadership.